The FirePro W4100 is a tiny little card, but for its age and size, it does pack a pretty good punch. With 2 GB of memory and 4 mini display ports, if you were multitasking back in 2014, there's a good chance your workstation had this card. On the outside, it does share a lot of similarities with the W2100, which I did a video about earlier, but compared to its little brother, it is a much more capable card. Starting out with Overwatch and at 1080p low quality settings, we're in the neighborhood of 60 FPS. Sometimes a little bit over, sometimes a little bit under. When the action heats up, you might go down into the low 50s, upper 40s, but on average, you are going to be above 60 FPS at all times, which is a good start for this card. Next up is TemTem, and at 720p and medium quality settings, we are in the 40 FPS range when we're in the overworld and about 60 FPS while we're in battle. This game does have a built-in FPS limit, so if you are looking for a smoother experience, you can just put it down to 30 FPS and it will be there at all times. Next up is Dirt 3, and at 1080p medium quality settings, we are at 60 FPS. You will have occasional dips down into the 50s, but on average, we are going to have a 60 FPS experience at the medium quality settings. Sonic Generations is unfortunately not able to hit 60 FPS at 1080p. Even at the lower quality settings, it's still going to be somewhere around the 50 FPS range, so you would need to drop it down to 720p if you were looking for a 60 FPS experience. As is becoming a trend on this channel, Torchlight 2 runs very well on this card. Pretty much you're going to be above 60 FPS at all times, though as is typical with these types of games, when the action does heat up you might get below 60 FPS for a brief moment, but for the most part you're going to be above 60 FPS at all times and usually above 100 FPS. Control is one of the more demanding games in my test suite, and so I didn't really have super high expectations about being able to hit 60 FPS, but if you are looking for a more console quality level of experience, I did find that you can play this game at 720p low quality settings at pretty much a locked 30 FPS, even when the action heats up. In rolled out, I did find I was able to hit 60 FPS with a mixture of medium and high quality settings, though I did have to lower the resolution scaling down to 33%, which in most games would be a deal breaker, but in this game with its particular art design does actually look still pretty good. And if you did want to play at a higher resolution, you could just lower the settings down. Timberborn is playable at 60 FPS at the low quality setting, but if you did want to raise the quality setting up a bit, you could reduce the resolution scaling down to about 720p and still achieve that 60 FPS. In my testing with a bunch of other games, I did notice it's the shadows that give this card a lot of problems, so if you are having issues in other games, it might be something to look into there too. And if you're not really a serious gamer and just want to do something a little more casually, this card does deliver in that aspect. Townscape does deliver 60 FPS at 1080p in highest quality settings, and that's really no big surprise since the same was achievable with the W2100. The same thing applies to Super Auto Pets. 60 FPS is no problem on this card. And since this card supports drivers that are relatively modern, you shouldn't really have any issues playing upcoming games of this style for the foreseeable future. Last up, it's Lost Ark, and this game at 1080p lower quality settings is in the 40 FPS range, sometimes dipping down into the 30s, but a above 30 FPS experience for the majority of the time. Similar to Torchlight 2, when the action does heat up, you're probably going to drop below 30 FPS, but on average, a 30 FPS experience is achievable with this card, and there is a little bit of headroom to play with. Compared to the W4100, this card is a noticeable step up. It's not a gaming powerhouse, but since both cards can be had for relatively the same amount of money, it's a no-brainer to pick up this card above the W4100, especially if you're looking for something that is low profile and around the $20 mark.